What if I told you that the very thing you've been running from your entire life, change itself, is actually the doorway to unshakable peace? We spend so much energy trying to freeze moments, control outcomes, and build a permanent, solid version of ourselves that'll finally be safe from life's uncertainties. Yet here's the paradox that Buddhist wisdom reveals. The more we resist change, the more we suffer, and the more we embrace it, the freer we become. Right now, in this very moment, everything about you is transforming. Your cells are regenerating, your thoughts are shifting. Even your breath is different than it was 5 seconds ago. But somehow we've convinced ourselves that we're supposed to be unchanging, that there's some fixed me at the core that needs protecting at all costs. Here's what most people never discover about Buddhist teachings. They're not asking you to believe anything or join some exclusive spiritual club. Instead, they're inviting you to look closely at what's already happening, to see reality without the comforting stories we tell ourselves. The concepts of impermanence and non-self aren't meant to depress you or make life feel meaningless. They're actually liberation tools that can free you from the exhausting prison of trying to control an uncontrollable universe. Imagine living without constantly defending your ego, without panicking every time something changes, without that gnawing feeling that you're not enough, or that happiness is always just out of reach. That's not fantasy. That's what becomes possible when you truly understand these foundational principles of Buddhist philosophy. Today, we're diving deep into two of the most transformative insights ever articulated by the Buddha: impermanence and non-self. These aren't abstract philosophy lessons for monks in caves. They're practical wisdom you can apply immediately to transform how you experience relationships, challenges, success, failure, and everything in between. Whether you're completely new to Buddhism for beginners or you've been practicing Buddhist mindfulness for years, what we're exploring together will challenge assumptions you didn't even know you had. So take a breath, open your mind, and let's discover how embracing constant change and releasing the illusion of a fixed self might just be the secret to genuine, lasting peace you've been searching for all along. You know, there's something deeply humbling about how Buddhist teachings first traveled through time. Not through books or tablets, but through voices, whispers passed from teacher to student under banyan trees. Picture this: monks gathering at sunset, reciting the Buddha's words with devotion, yet knowing that each retelling carried the weight of human imperfection. Even the Buddha himself, while still walking among his disciples, witnessed his own words being twisted, misunderstood, reshaped by eager minds that hadn't quite grasped the essence. It's almost ironic, isn't it? The very teachings meant to free us from illusion were themselves wrapped in layers of misinterpretation from the start. Here's where Buddhist wisdom gets really interesting. The Mahayana tradition actually warns us about two dangerous extremes when we approach these ancient texts. On one hand, we've got folks who cling to every single syllable as if it were carved in stone, missing the living spirit behind the words. On the other, there are those who dismiss individual phrases as insignificant, losing precious nuances that unlock deeper understanding. Both paths distort the Dharma, and honestly, we've all probably fallen into one of these traps at some point in our spiritual journey. The real invitation isn't to worship the words themselves, but to engage with them dynamically, letting Buddhist philosophy breathe through our daily Buddhist practice. What the early Buddhist monks' teachings really show us is that scriptures aren't meant to be museum pieces. They're meant to be lived, questioned, and applied with genuine wisdom. When we approach Dharma talks or study the Noble Eightfold Path, we're not just collecting information for our mental library. We're opening ourselves to transformation, allowing these Buddhist life lessons to challenge our assumptions and reshape how we move through the world. It's like holding water in your hands. Grip too tightly and it slips away. Hold too loosely, and it's gone just the same. The balance requires presence, openness, and a willingness to let the teachings work on us rather than us working on them. Three Dharma Seals, core of Buddhism. Now let me share something that'll help you cut through centuries of confusion about what Buddhism actually stands for. Imagine you're holding 3 ancient keys, and each one unlocks a different door to the same magnificent room. That's essentially what the 3 Dharma Seals are in Buddhist spirituality. These seals are like a litmus test, a way to recognize authentic Buddhist teachings from everything else floating around out there. Whether you're diving into Buddhism for beginners, or you've been practicing Zen meditation for years, These three markers, impermanence, non-self, and nirvana, form the bedrock of genuine Dharma. It's fascinating how Theravada tradition sometimes frames them slightly differently, emphasizing suffering instead of nirvana. Yet we're all pointing toward the same profound truth. Here's what really blows my mind about the Four Noble Truths and how they dance with these seals. The differences between schools aren't contradictions, but rather reflections of Buddhism's incredible richness. Theravada practitioners might emphasize impermanence, suffering, and non-self, drawing our attention to the raw reality of human experience. Meanwhile, Mahayana philosophy leans into impermanence, non-self, and nirvana, offering a slightly more expansive vision that includes liberation right in the mix. Both approaches honor the same core essence, like two rivers flowing from the same mountain peak, carving different paths, but nourished by the same source. We're witnessing the evolution of Buddhist philosophy across cultures and centuries, each interpretation adding depth without losing the fundamental wisdom. What's beautiful is that these aren't just abstract concepts you study in Dharma talks. They're living principles that shape how Buddhist mindfulness actually functions in practice. When you sit down for Vipassana meditation and observe your breath, you're directly experiencing these seals in action. The breath changes. That's impermanence. There's no separate breather controlling it. That's non-self. And in that spacious awareness, there's a taste of peace. That's nirvana, right here, not some faraway spiritual destination. The Three Dharma Seals aren't philosophical puzzles to solve. They're invitations to see reality as it truly is, stripping away the layers of illusion we've built up over a lifetime. Impermanence, the reality of change. Let's talk about something that might completely flip your understanding of Buddhist teachings on its head. You've probably heard people say that impermanence, this fundamental law that everything changes, is what makes life so painful and tragic. But here's the twist that even seasoned practitioners sometimes miss. Impermanence isn't the villain in your story, it's actually the hero. Think about it for a second. Without change, that sick child would never heal, that broken heart would never mend, that oppressive regime would never fall. Impermanence, or anicca, as it's known in Buddhist wisdom, is the very pulse of life itself, the reason anything beautiful or hopeful can even exist in the first place. We've got this backwards in our culture, don't we? We treat change like it's something to fear, something that steals our happiness away. But what if I told you that the same force that takes away your youth is the one that gave you wisdom? The same flow that ended your last relationship might be clearing space for deeper love. When we practice Buddhist mindfulness and really observe impermanence in action, we start seeing it not as loss but as transformation, like watching a caterpillar dissolve into soup before emerging as a butterfly. The Noble Eightfold Path teaches us to work with this reality rather than fight against it, to surf the waves of change instead of drowning in them. Honestly, once you grasp this, your entire relationship with life shifts from resistance to dance. Here's where Buddhist philosophy gets really practical and hopeful. Impermanence means nothing is permanent, including your suffering. That depression you're wrestling with, it's changing even as you read this. That financial struggle, it's already evolving into something else. Even dictatorships crumble. Even the darkest night eventually surrenders to dawn. This isn't toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing. It's the raw, liberating truth that Buddhist monks' teachings have been pointing to for 2,500 years. When you deeply understand that everything conditioned, meaning everything that arises from causes and conditions, must inevitably change, you stop clinging so desperately to the good times and stop drowning so completely in the bad ones. Impermanence in daily life. So how does this understanding of impermanence actually show up when you're just living your regular Tuesday, dealing with traffic and deadlines and relationships? Here's what happens. You start noticing the small miracles you've been sleeping through your entire life. That morning coffee tastes richer because you know this exact moment, this specific sip, will never come again. Your kids' laughter hits differently when you realize they're growing and changing with every breath, that this version of them exists only right now. Buddhist mindfulness isn't about being sad that things are ending. It's about being fully alive to what's actually here. We often talk about gratitude in spiritual circles, but real gratitude is born from this visceral awareness that nothing, absolutely nothing, is guaranteed beyond this present moment. Let me ask you something. When's the last time you really looked at someone you love, truly saw them, without the fog of familiarity dulling your perception? Impermanence awareness does something profound to our relationships. It prevents us from taking people for granted and falling into that dangerous complacency that kills love slowly. Imagine approaching your partner each day as if they're someone you're meeting anew, because in a very real sense they are. Yesterday's version of them is gone forever. This is what daily Buddhist practice actually looks like beyond the meditation cushion. It's not about being morbid or anxious about loss. It's about loving more deeply, listening more carefully, and showing up more fully because you understand the preciousness of each unrepeatable moment we share. And here's the kicker. This awareness doesn't just deepen joy, it actually helps us navigate the rough patches with more grace and flexibility. When you're stuck in a difficult situation, knowing that this too shall pass isn't just a platitude, it's Buddhist wisdom rooted in the fundamental nature of reality. Your body is aging? Yes, but it's also healing and regenerating billions of cells daily. Your career hit a wall? The wall itself is impermanent, already cracking in ways you can't yet see. Buddhist spirituality teaches us that when we stop demanding that things stay frozen in place, we become infinitely more adaptable, resilient, and creative in responding to life's inevitable changes. Non-self, beyond the illusion of I. Now we're diving into what might be the most misunderstood concept in all of Buddhist teachings. And honestly, it's the one that can absolutely revolutionize how you experience being alive. Non-self, or anatta, doesn't mean you don't exist, or that you're some kind of illusion floating through space. What it means is way more interesting and liberating than that. There's no Gu-ding essence, no unchanging core sitting inside you like a permanent soul stone that remains the same from birth to death. Think about who you were 10 years ago. Different thoughts, different selves, different dreams, different fears. So where exactly is this you that supposedly stays constant? Buddhist philosophy invites us to look closely and see that what we call self is actually a flowing river, not a solid rock. Here's where it gets really beautiful. You're not separate from the world around you. You're woven into it like a thread in an infinite tapestry. Your parents shaped you. Your teachers molded you. The air you breathe sustains you. The farmers who grew your food nourish you. When we practice Zen meditation or Vipassana meditation and observe this truth directly, we start recognizing that our identity is actually a magnificent web of relationships and conditions, constantly shifting and interdependent. The Four Noble Truths point us toward this realization, because so much of our suffering comes from defending this imaginary fortress of me, mine, I, against an allegedly hostile world. But what if there's no fortress to defend? What if you're already connected to everything, already part of the whole dance? This insight from Buddhist monks' teachings isn't meant to make you feel small or insignificant. Quite the opposite, actually. When you stop clinging to this isolated, separate ego that needs constant protecting and feeding, something amazing happens. You become free. Free to love without fear of losing yourself. Free to give without feeling depleted. Free to change without experiencing it as death. True happiness, the kind that Buddhist spirituality points toward, comes from harmony with others and recognizing our deep interdependence, not from building higher walls around an imaginary separate self. Once you see through the illusion, you realize you've been trying to protect something that was never really there in the first place. Impermanence as the key to reality. Let me tell you something that might save you years of wandering in spiritual circles. Impermanence isn't just another concept to add to your collection of Buddhist wisdom factoids. It's not something you frame on your wall or discuss intellectually over tea while nodding thoughtfully. Impermanence is actually a living key that unlocks the door to reality itself, but here's the catch. It only works when you use it, when you live it, when you bring it into every single moment of your daily Buddhist practice. You can memorize every Dharma talk ever given, study the Noble Eightfold Path backwards and forwards, but until you're actually experiencing impermanence while you're eating breakfast, arguing with your spouse, or sitting in traffic, you're just collecting spiritual souvenirs. This is what separates Buddhism for beginners from genuine transformation, the willingness to move from theory into lived experience. When you're chewing your food, can you feel the flavors changing with each moment? The texture dissolving, the experience constantly shifting? When you're at work, can you notice how your mood fluctuates, how your energy rises and falls, how nothing stays frozen even for 5 minutes? Buddhist mindfulness is the practice of holding this key of impermanence in your awareness, not occasionally when it's convenient, but as a continuous recognition that life is flowing, morphing, dancing right now. It's not about achieving some perfect state where you never forget. It's about returning again and again to this simple truth that everything you're experiencing is already changing, even as you experience it. And here's where Buddhist philosophy gets intensely practical and liberating. When you truly practice with this key of impermanence, something miraculous starts happening to your suffering. That anxiety you've been carrying, when you see it clearly as impermanent, constantly shifting sensations and thoughts rather than a solid thing, it begins to lose its grip on you. That anger that feels so justified and permanent? Watch it closely with mindfulness and you'll see it's actually a sequence of fleeting moments, each one different from the last. Buddhist life lessons aren't about suppressing or transcending your human experience. They're about seeing it so clearly, so intimately, that you naturally stop adding unnecessary suffering on top of life's inevitable challenges. Dependent origination and interconnection. You know what's wild about Buddhist teachings? They're not trying to turn you into some isolated, enlightened being sitting alone on a mountaintop. Actually, the deeper you go into understanding impermanence and non-self, the more you realize something profound. You can't separate your happiness from everyone else's. This is what dependent origination is all about. This recognition that absolutely everything exists in relationship, nothing stands alone. Your morning coffee depends on farmers in Colombia, rain clouds, soil microbes, the truck driver who delivered the beans, and thousands of other conditions you'll never even know about. Buddhist wisdom shows us that this isn't just true for coffee. It's true for your thoughts, your emotions, your sense of identity, everything. Here's something we often miss in our individualistic culture. Genuine peace isn't a personal achievement you unlock and then enjoy in isolation. When we practice Buddhist mindfulness and really look closely, we see that our well-being is utterly entangled with the well-being of those around us. You can't truly be happy while your neighbor is suffering, not because you're a good person who should feel guilty, but because at a fundamental level, the boundaries we draw between me and them are provisional and porous. The Noble Eightfold Path guides us toward ethical action, not as a moral obligation, but as a natural expression of understanding how deeply interconnected we are. When you hurt someone else, you're literally creating conditions for your own suffering. And when you cultivate compassion, you're nourishing the whole web of life that includes you. This is where Buddhist philosophy moves from personal practice into engaged spirituality. And honestly, this is where it gets really exciting. Once you see through the illusion of separation that non-self reveals, once you understand that everything is impermanent and interdependent, compassion isn't something you have to force or fake. It arises naturally. Buddhist spirituality at its core is about recognizing that we're all in this together, that your liberation and mine aren't separate projects. The same Dharma talks that teach us about emptiness and change are also teaching us about responsibility, care, and our intimate connection with all beings and with nature itself. The middle way, balance beyond extremes. Now let's venture into territory where Mahayana Buddhist teachings really expand our understanding. And trust me, this is where things get beautifully complex. We've been talking about impermanence and non-self, but Mahayana tradition adds layers that might bend your mind a little. Emptiness, provisionality, and what's called the middle way. Emptiness doesn't mean nothing exists. That would be nihilism, and Buddhist philosophy firmly rejects that dead end. Instead, emptiness means that phenomena don't have independent, self-contained existence. They arise through conditions, relationships, causes coming together in this precise moment. That chair you're sitting on? It's empty of inherent chairness, existing only because of wood, carpenter, design concepts, gravity, and your body needing support right now. Here's where provisionality comes in, and it's honestly one of the most liberating insights in all of Buddhist wisdom. The names we give things, chair, happiness, self, success, They're just temporary labels we slap onto constantly changing realities to navigate life. We mistake the map for the territory, the label for the thing itself. When you practice Zen meditation or Vipassana meditation deeply enough, you start seeing through these conventional designations. You realize that anger is just a word pointing to a complex, ever-shifting constellation of sensations, thoughts, and reactions, not a solid thing that possesses you. Daily Buddhist practice becomes this ongoing recognition that while we need language and concepts to function, we shouldn't mistake them for ultimate truth or cling to them as if they're real in themselves. The middle way. This is the genius move that prevents us from falling into extremes that cause unnecessary suffering. Buddhist monks' teachings warn against two dangerous ditches: believing things exist absolutely and permanently on one side, or believing nothing exists at all on the other. Both views trap us in delusion. The middle way says phenomena arise dependently, exist provisionally, and are empty of inherent nature, all at the same time. It's not wishy-washy fence-sitting, it's precise navigation through reality as it actually is. When you grasp this balance, you can engage fully with life without getting caught in rigid beliefs or falling into meaningless relativism. Practical wisdom and daily transformation. So here we are, and I want to bring this all back down to earth. Because honestly, what good is Buddhist philosophy if it just stays locked up in ancient texts or monastery walls? The Three Dharma Seals we've been exploring aren't meant to be abstract museum pieces you admire from a distance. They're practical tools, lived insights that can completely transform how you move through your actual daily life, with all its messiness, beauty, heartbreak, and joy. When you wake up tomorrow morning and face whatever challenges are waiting for you, these aren't just interesting ideas. They're keys that unlock freedom right in the middle of ordinary existence. Think about it. Impermanence teaches you resilience because you know that no matter how stuck you feel right now, change is already happening beneath the surface. Non-self cultivates genuine compassion because you stop defending an imaginary fortress and start recognizing yourself in everyone you meet. The middle way helps you avoid getting trapped in black and white thinking, those extremes that make life so unnecessarily dramatic and painful. Buddhist mindfulness becomes the practice of remembering these truths moment by moment, not perfectly, but persistently. Buddhist life lessons aren't about reaching some distant enlightened state. They're about waking up to the fluid, interconnected nature of reality that's been here all along, hiding in plain sight. What we're really talking about with Buddhist teachings is an invitation to live differently, with more openness, awareness, and harmony. To see each moment as fresh and unrepeatable, each person as a unique expression of conditions constantly changing, each challenge as temporary and workable. Daily Buddhist practice means bringing this understanding into your relationships, your work, your quiet moments alone, your struggles and celebrations. It's about living with eyes wide open to impermanence, a heart unburdened by clinging to a separate self, and a mind balanced enough to navigate reality's complexities without getting lost in extremes. So now I'm curious, after everything we've explored together about impermanence and non-self, what's shifting for you? Have you noticed areas in your life where you've been clinging desperately to permanence, trying to freeze moments or control outcomes that were never meant to be controlled? Maybe you're seeing your relationships differently now, or perhaps you're recognizing how much energy you've been pouring into defending this idea of a separate, gu-aided self that Buddhist teachings reveal as illusory. Drop a comment below and share what resonated most deeply with you. Was it the liberating realization that change isn't your enemy, or the recognition that true happiness comes from interconnection rather than isolation? Here's what I really want to know. Where in your daily life can you start applying these insights right now? When you're stuck in traffic tomorrow, can you notice impermanence at work in your frustration, watching it rise and fall like waves? When you're with loved ones, can you see past the labels and stories to recognize the constantly changing, interdependent miracle they actually are? Buddhist mindfulness isn't about perfection. It's about showing up again and again to reality as it is. Tell us in the comments about a moment when you experienced impermanence or non-self directly, even if you didn't have words for it at the time. Those stories and personal reflections create a sangha, a community of practice that supports all of us on this path. And listen, if these Buddhist life lessons spoke to you, if you felt something shift in how you're understanding yourself in the world, then you need to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell right now. We're building something special here, a space where ancient Buddhist wisdom meets modern life, where Dharma talks become practical tools for daily transformation. Every week we dive deep into teachings like the Noble Eightfold Path, Zen meditation practices, Vipassana techniques, and Buddhist spirituality that actually works in real life. Don't miss out on the journey we're taking together. Subscribe now so you can continue receiving these transformative Buddhist teachings and become part of a community that's committed to waking up together.